They shoved two women through the door like they were throwing out trash. Laughter echoed behind them before boots stomped away into darkness. Inside the cabin, quiet hung thick and unnatural. The guy positioned in the shadows didn't budge, didn't utter a sound, simply gazed at the ladies with a look that carried depths the crowd beyond never cared to explore. One lady's fingers drifted to her waist. The other remained rigid, scanning the room as if it spoke in a code only she could decipher. An odd vibe lingered in the space. A throw arranged with excessive precision. A mug retaining heat on the surface. The subtle odor of something clinical that clashed with such a remote spot. The guy advanced a single pace, then halted. His respiration was off, too faint, too measured. Beyond, chatter floated through the gloom. Let it sit for 60 minutes. This'll be the funniest prank we've ever done. But within those walls, three individuals lingered in an instant far removed from humor. A shift was imminent. A fracture had already occurred. And come dawn, the guys who believed they controlled the outcome wouldn't grasp a thing about the chain reaction they'd ignited. The guy's mouth formed a shape. A single term, scarcely heard. Not in their tongue. Not in his own. Just before he crumpled. 3 hours prior, Gideon Pratt had been by himself. That was his chosen state. The rest of the crew at the spread maintained space, and he reciprocated. Nobody probed. Nobody demanded replies. The setup worked for all. He mended barriers along the eastern edge where the terrain grew rugged and hostile. The timber was aged, cracking beneath his grip as he bolstered stakes that ought to have been swapped out ages back. His digits throbbed. His skull pounded with a tension that had mounted over 48 hours. Perspiration drenched his top even as the night breeze chilled. Upon heading back to the central structure, conversations hushed, folks averted their eyes. Wade Langston loitered by the enclosure with a quartet of companions, their expressions warped into what passed for amusement. Gideon continued toward his shack at the distant perimeter of the land, a good half-mile from the group, precisely as he liked. In his wake, chuckles burst forth, biting vicious. Wade's tone traveled over the gap. Think he'll even know what to do with them? More laughter. Gideon didn't turn around. He never turned around. Inside his cabin, he poured water from the basin and pressed a damp cloth against his forehead. The fever had started yesterday. Just a low burn he could ignore while working, but it was spreading now, settling into his bones. He'd felt this before. Knew what came next? 3 days of sweating through blankets, 3 days of fighting to stay conscious. He'd survived it alone last time. He could do it again. The cloth in his hand was hot within seconds. He dunked it again, wrung it out. His vision blurred at the edges. Outside, boots crunched against dirt. Multiple sets moving toward his cabin. Gideon straightened slowly. His hand went to the table where he kept nothing but acup and a single plate. No weapon. He'd stopped carrying one years ago after what happened. After what he'd done, the door rattled. Someone pounded against the wood. WDE's voice came through. Got a delivery for you, Pratt. Special gift from the boys. Gideon said nothing. He gripped the edge of the table as another wave of heat rolled through his skull. Come on now! Don't be rude. Open up. He moved toward the door. Each step felt like walking through thick mud. His hand reached for the handle, pulled it open. Wade stood there grinning. Behind him, two women, dark hair, dark eyes, watching everything with the kind of stillness that came from knowing exactly how much danger they were in. One of them had a bruise forming along her cheekbone. The other held herself like she was ready to run or fight, whichever came first. Found these two wandering near the river camps, Wade said. His voice was loud, performative. Figured you might want some company. Get real lonely out here by yourself, don't you? The other men behind Wade laughed. One of them shoved the younger woman forward. She stumbled but didn't fall. Caught herself with a grace that suggested she'd been shoved before many times. Gideon looked at Wade, then at the women, then back at Wade. Leave, Gideon said. His voice came out rougher than intended. WDE's grin widened. Now that's no way to treat a gift. Well, check back in the morning. See how you got along. He turned. The others followed. Their laughter faded into the distance. The two women stood in his doorway. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Gideon stepped back, gestured for them to enter, not because of what Wade wanted, but because leaving them outside meant they'd be vulnerable to whoever came back. They exchanged a glance. Some silent communication passed between them. Then they stepped inside. The door closed. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. The older woman's hand moved to her side, slow, deliberate, checking for something hidden there. Gideon moved toward the far wall, put distance between them. His legs felt weak. The fever was climbing faster now. He needed to sit, needed water, needed them to understand he wasn't what Wade thought he was. He opened his mouth to speak. The room tilted. His vision went white at the edges, and he realized with sudden clarity that he wasn't going to make it through this night conscious. Gideon caught himself against the wall, his palm pressed flat against the rough wood. Splinters bit into his skin, but the pain helped focus his vision. The room stopped spinning almost. The two women watched him. The older one's hand remained at her side, ready. The younger one took a half step back toward the door. He needed them to understand. Needed to say something that would cut through whatever language separated them, but words felt heavy in his mouth. His tongue was thick, dry. He gestured toward the door, then toward the darkness outside. Made a pushing motion with his hand, trying to tell them they could leave, should leave. Before Wade and the others came back in the morning, expecting something he had no intention of giving them. The women didn't move. The older one said something quick, sharp words he didn't recognize. Her sister responded. Softer questioning. Gideon pressed his other hand against his forehead. The heat radiating from his own skin shocked him. This was worse than last time. Much worse. 3 days might not be enough. He might not wake up at all. He moved toward his bedroll in the corner. Slowly, making sure they could see every movement. Making sure they knew he wasn't approaching them. His legs shook with each step. The younger woman said something. Her voice carried a tone he recognized even without understanding the words concern or maybe just observation. Noting that something was wrong with the man in front of them, Gideon lowered himself onto the bedroll. The impact sent another wave of heat through his body. He closed his eyes, opened them. The women were talking to each other now. Quick exchanges. The older one moved toward the door, her hand on the handle. She could leave. They both could. The door wasn't locked. He had no way to stop them even if he wanted to. But she paused, turned back, studied him with eyes that saw more than he was comfortable with. His shirt was soaked through. He pulled at the collar, trying to get air against his skin. The movement was clumsy, weak. He hated how weak it made him look. Hated that these women were seeing him like this. Not because of what Wade intended, but because Gideon had spent years making sure no one saw him vulnerable ever. The younger woman spoke again. This time, her sister responded by stepping away from the door. Moving instead toward Gideon, cautious, testing, she crouched several feet away from him. Close enough to see clearly, but far enough to run if needed. Her eyes tracked from his face to his hands to the damp cloth he'd left on the table. She stood, walked to the basin, picked up the cloth. Gideon wanted to tell her she didn't have to do that. Wanted to explain he'd survived this alone like he survived everything alone. But his vision was blurring again, the edges of the room turning soft and undefined. She returned with the cloth, knelt beside him, reached toward his forehead. He flinched. Couldn't help it. Contact meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant risk. Risk meant loss. She pulled back, waited, held the cloth where he could see it. Her sister remained by the door, watching, one hand still at her side, still ready. Gideon forced himself to stay still. The older woman said something. The younger one responded without looking away from him. Then slowly, carefully, she pressed the damp cloth against his forehead. The coolness shocked through him, relief and agony at the same time. He heard a sound escape his throat, something between a sigh and a groan. The woman pulled the cloth away, dunked it in the basin again, wrung it out, returned. This time he didn't flinch. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt unreliable. She kept refreshing the cloth, kept pressing it against his burning skin. Her sister eventually moved away from the door, settled near the far wall, still watching, still ready to act if needed. Gideon's thoughts scattered like leaves in wind. He tried to form words, tried to thank them, tried to explain they didn't owe him anything. That helping him didn't mean they belonged to him. That when morning came, they could tell Wade whatever they wanted. Say he'd hurt them, say he'd been cruel. He wouldn't defend himself. He'd stopped defending himself years ago, but the words wouldn't come, only fragments. His wife's name, Sarah, he heard himself say it. Felt the grief rise up like it always did when the fever took his control. The women exchanged another look. Something shifted in the older one's expression. Not softness exactly, but recognition, like she understood what loss sounded like in any language. Gideon's eyes fell closed. He fought tooth and then failed, fought again. The last thing he felt was the cloth against his forehead, cool and careful. The last thing he heard was one of the women speaking. Low, steady, and then darkness pulled him under completely. Ayanna stood and backed away from the unconscious man. Her hand found the knife at her side, small, sharp, hidden in the folds of her dress. She'd kept it through everything. Through being taken from the camps, through being sold, through being dragged here by men who smelled of whiskey and cruelty. Her sister Kimma remained kneeling beside him, still holding the damp cloth, still watching his face like she was reading something written there. Ayanna spoke in their language. Quick, urgent, we leave now. While he cannot follow, Kimla looked up. Her eyes held that expression Ayanna knew too well. The one that meant she'd already made a decision. The stubborn one. He is dying. That is not our concern. He tried to send us away before he fell. Ayanna moved to the door, tested the handle, unlocked, open. Freedom 3 steps away because he knows what those men expect. When they return, they will want proof. They will want us destroyed. Him humiliated. We leave now, or we are part of whatever game they are playing. Kimmy Mela set the cloth down, stood, but she didn't move toward the door. Instead, she walked to the small shelf where a few items rested. A tin cup, a folded blanket that looked hand-sewn, a small bundle of dried plants that made her pause. She picked up the bundle, brought it to her nose. Her expression shifted. Someone gathered these recently for fever. Then he knew he was sick. He can treat himself when he wakes. If he wakes. Kimla turned the bundle in her hands. These are old, losing strength. He needs fresh ones. There are plants near here by the water. I saw them when they brought us. Ayanna felt something cold settle in her chest. You want to help him? I want to survive. Those men will return. If we are gone, they will hunt us. 2 women alone. Easy targets. If we are here and he is alive, there is confusion, questions, time. It was logical. Ayanna hated that it was logical. Her sister had always been better at reading situations, at finding the narrow path between dangers. But there was something else in Kimmy Mela's voice. Something softer that had nothing to do with logic. The man on the bedroll stirred. A sound escaped him. Raw, broken, then words. English words thick with delirium. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His hand reached out, grasping at nothing. Should have been there. Should have known. Kimmy knelt again, pressed the cloth back to his forehead. He quieted slightly under her touch. Ayanna watched her sister's face. Saw the shift happening. The dangerous thing that occurred when Kimla decided someone was worth saving. He lost someone, Kimla said quietly. Like we did. Everyone has lost someone. That does not make him safe. No, but it makes him human. Outside, far in the distance, voices carried on the night air. The men still awake, still drinking, still laughing about what they'd done, what they expected to find in the morning. Ayanna calculated distances, terrain, how far they could get before sunrise. The river was closest, but also where camps were. The hills meant exposure. The forest meant getting lost. Every direction held risk. Staying held risk. But Kimmy was right about one thing. If they ran and were caught, there would be no confusion. No questions, just consequences. She looked at the man again. His face was pale beneath the flush of fever. Sweat soaked his hair. His breathing came shallow and quick. He was dying. Probably would die even with help. But if he lived, if morning came and he was still breathing and they were still there, the men who brought them would find their joke had failed. Would find something they didn't expect. Ayanna had learned years ago that surviving meant choosing between bad options and worse options. She released her grip on the knife, left it hidden but accessible. Get your plants, she said, but we take turns watching. One sleeps, one guards always. Kimla stood quickly. Relief flickered across her face. The door stays unlocked. We do not trap ourselves. Ayanna moved to the window. Check the sight lines, and if those men return before morning, we run. No hesitation. Kimla nodded. Move toward the door. And sister, Ayanna added, her voice harder now, do not let compassion make you careless. We save him if we can, but we save ourselves first. The words hung in the air between them. A promise, a warning. Kimla slipped out into the darkness. Ayanna stood alone with the dying man and wondered which choice would destroy them faster, running or staying outside. Laughter erupted again closer this time. Morning would come too soon. Kimmy returned within minutes, carrying fresh stems and leaves. She worked quickly, crushing plants between her palms, mixing them with water from the basin. The smell filled the small cabin, sharp and green, familiar in a way that made Ayana's chest tighten with memories of their mother doing the same. Gideon's fever climbed as the night deepened. He thrashed against the bedroll, spoke in fragments, names, apologies, pieces of a past that tumbled out without order or sense. The fire was too fast. I couldn't reach her. Told her I'd be back before dark. Lied. Always lying. Sarah. God. Sarah. His hand reached out again and again, searching for someone who wasn't there. Would never be there again. Kimla managed to get some of the plant mixture between his lips. Most of it ran down his chin, but some went down. Enough, maybe. Ayana kept watch by the window. The men's voices had faded hours ago. Either they'd gone to sleep or moved elsewhere. She didn't trust the silence. Silence could hide worse things than noise. Around midnight, Gideon's breathing changed. Slower, deeper. The thrashing stopped. For a moment, Ayana thought he'd died, but his chest still rose and fell. His skin was still burning, just quieter now, like the fever had taken him somewhere far beneath consciousness. Sleep, Ayana told her sister. I will watch. Kimla hesitated, then nodded. She settled against the far wall, wrapped in her own arms. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Ayana sat alone with the night and the dying man and thought she didn't want. She thought about their father gone 3 winters now. She thought about their mother taken by sickness 2 winters after that. She thought about the men who came to their camp offering trade, offering protection, offering lies. She thought about how quickly safety became prison, how quickly promises became chains. Theman on the bedroll stirred. His eyes opened. Not fully, not focused, but open. He looked at her, through her, past her. You're still here, he whispered. His voice was rough, broken. You should run. Ayana didn't respond, didn't move. They'll come back. Morning, Wade and the others. His hand lifted slightly, fell back. They'll expect things from me, from you. We know. His eyes tried to focus. Failed. I won't do anything they want. You understand? We understand. Then run, please, before they return. Something shifted in Ayana's chest. Something she'd kept locked away since the day the traitors came. Since the day she learned that kindness was usually just cruelty, wearing a different face. But this man wasn't asking them to stay. Wasn't demanding, wasn't taking. He was begging them to leave. Even while dying, even while knowing Wade would return and find him alone and defenseless, he was choosing their safety over his own dignity. Your wife, Ayana said quietly. Sarah, how did she die? His eyes closed. Pain rippled across his features. Not from fever. From memory. Fire. Our house. I was late coming home. Working. Always working. His breathing hitched. When I got there, everything gone. Her everything. How long ago? 2 years, maybe 3. Time hard to count. Ayana understood that. Time after loss didn't count the same way. Days blurred. Seasons meant nothing. The men here, they know. No, I'm different after. No, I don't talk much. Easier to mock someone like me. He coughed. The sound wet and harsh. Kimmy stirred in her sleep but didn't wake the plants. Gideon whispered, your sister. She knows medicine. Our mother taught us. She was good teacher. She was good mother. Something passed between them in the darkness. An understanding that needed no more words. 2 people who'd survived loss, who carried it differently, but carried it nonetheless. When morning comes, Ayana said, and the men return. What will you tell them? Gideon's eyes opened again. More focused now despite the fever that you stayed because you chose to. Not because I forced. Not because of their joke. They will not believe you. I know they will make your life harder. Already hard. Ayana looked at him for a long moment. This strange man who'd been given 2 women as a cruel gift and wanted only to protect them from the gift givers. Outside, the darkness began shifting toward gray. Dawn approaching. Soon, Theman would wake, would come to see their joke's conclusion, and Ayana made a decision that had nothing to do with logic or survival strategy. We stay, she said. Not for them, not for their joke, but because you asked us to leave. Gideon's expression showed confusion, then understanding, then something that might have been gratitude if he had strength enough to show it. His eyes closed, his breathing settled, and in the growing light, Ayanna heard it. Boots on dirt, multiple sets. Approaching the cabin, WDE's voice carried through the dawn. Time to see how the night went, boys. Ayanna stood, checked her knife, woke her sister with a touch. The joke was over. Whatever came next would be something else entirely. The door rattled before Wade pushed it open. He stepped inside first, grinning. 4 men crowded behind him. Their faces held the eager cruelty of people expecting entertainment at someone else's expense. Gideon was still on the bedroll, his eyes closed, breathing shallow. The fever hadn't fully broken yet. Sweat soaked through the blanket beneath him. The 2 women stood between him and the door, not cowering, not hiding, positioned like shields. WDE's grin widened when he saw the scene. Well, well, looks like they took real good care of you, Pratt. Almost like they're playing house. Theman behind him laughed. Ayanna's hand moved to her side. Kimala shifted to block Wade's view of Gideon more completely. Move aside, girls, Wade said. His voice carried false sweetness. We just want to see how our friend is doing. Make sure he appreciated our gift. Neither woman moved. WDE's expression darkened. I said, move. He stepped forward, reached toward Ayanna's arm. Behind them, Gideon stirred, his eyes opened, unfocused, feverish. He saw shapes, heard voices, registered danger through the fog in his mind. He tried to sit up. The room spun, his vision blurred, but he could see Wade, could see the threat, could see the 2 women standing between them. The women who'd stayed, who'd cared for him, who'd chosen to protect him when they could have fled. His mouth moved. Words came out thick, confused, desperate. Get away from my wives. The room went silent. Wade froze, his hands still extended toward Ayanna. What did you say? Gideon pushed himself up. His arms shook, his head pounded, but something primal drove him forward, some instinct deeper than fever or weakness. I said, get away from my wives. The words came stronger now, still rough, still edged with delirium, but certain. Ayanna turned, stared at him, her eyes wide. Kimya's expression showed shock mixed with something else. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of what he'd just done. Wade lawed, but the sound came out forced. Your wives, that what you're calling them now? You're out of your head with fever, Pratt. Maybe. Gideon managed to get his feet under him. Stood, swayed. Kimala moved instinctively to steady him. But there, mine to protect, mine to defend. You don't touch them. One of the men behind Wade spoke up, nervous. Wade, maybe we should shut up. Wade's face flushed red. You're delusional, Pratt. Fever's cooked your brain. These aren't your wives. They're property. Goods we traded for. You don't get to just claim them because you're sick. Gideon took a step forward. Nearly fell. Caught himself against the wall. His vision darkened at the edges, but he kept his eyes locked on Wade. Not property, not goods. Each word cost him. My wives, my family, and you need to leave now. The fever gave him a strange clarity. Or maybe it stripped away everything except the essential truth. These women had stayed, had cared, had chosen him as much as he'd chosen them. Whatever word defined that, whatever label protected them, he'd claim it. Even if it killed him to stand here saying it. Wade studied him, then started laughing again. This time, genuine, cruel boys. You seeing this man so desperate and lonely he's hallucinating marriage to 2 women who were dumped on him as a joke. Joke's over, Gideon said. His legs threatened to give out and they're staying as my wives under my protection. Anyone has a problem with that can take it up with me when I'm not dying. He swayed again. Kimala and Ayanna moved simultaneously, supporting him from both sides. The gesture said more than words could. They'd positioned themselves not as property or jokes or gifts, but as partners, as chosen family. WDE's expression shifted through several emotions. Disbelief, anger, something that might have been respect or just calculation. You're serious, Wade said flatly. You actually just claimed them while barely conscious. Because of what? Some fever dream? Because it's true. Gideon's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Been true since they stayed. Just took dying to say it, his eyes closed. He couldn't hold them open anymore. But he remained standing, held up by the 2 women insisted were jokes. The 2 women Gideon had just called his wives in front of witnesses, in front of the world. Whatever happened next, whatever consequences came, he'd said it, made it real, given them protection through the only word these men would understand and respect. The room tilted. Darkness pulled at him. The last thing he heard was WDE's voice, distant, angry. "This isn't over, Pratt." Then footsteps, retreating, the door slamming. Then nothing but the feeling of being lowered gently back to the bedroll. Cool cloth against his forehead. Soft voices speaking in a language he didn't understand. And the knowledge that he'd woken from fever long enough to say the one thing that mattered. They were his wives now, in the eyes of everyone who'd witnessed it. And somehow through the delirium and weakness that felt exactly right. Gideon woke to silence. The cabin was empty except for Kimmy Mella, who sat by the window watching the landscape. Morning light filtered through. How much time had passed? Hours? Days? His head felt clearer. The fever had finally broken. But with clarity came memory. He'd said something to Wade. Something about his mouth went dry. Kimla noticed him stirring. Came over with water, helped him drink. How long? His voice came out rough. One day you collapsed after they left. Fever broke last night. Her English was careful, precise. Wade, the others. They came back. No, but Sterling came hours ago. He is outside talking with my sister. Gideon sat up slowly. His body ached, but the worst had passed. What I said to Wade? Did I? You called us your wives. Yes. Kimla's expression was unreadable. In front of all of them, the weight of it hit him. He'd claimed them publicly while barely conscious, given them a label that would follow them, protect them, or destroy them, depending on what came next. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly. The fever made you say what you felt. She set the cup down. My sister is outside because Sterling wants to understand what you meant. What happens now? Gideon stood, his legs held barely. He moved to the door, opened it. Sterling Road stood with Ayanna near the corral. Both turned when they heard him. Sterling approached. Studied Gideon's face. You look better. Good, because we need to talk. I know what you're going to say. Do you? Sterling's voice was flat because Wade rode out this morning. Told everyone at 3 different settlements what happened. How Gideon Pratt claimed 2 Apache women as his wives. Some folks think you're brave. Some think you're insane. Most just want to know if you meant it. Ayanna walked closer, her eyes locked on Gideon's. Did you? The question hung between them. Simple, direct. Everything depended on his answer. Gideon looked at her, then at Kimmy Malla in the doorway, then back at Sterling. I was fevered, barely conscious. But yeah, I meant it. Sterling nodded slowly. Then you understand what you've done. You've made a public claim, given them protection through your name, but you've also painted a target. Not everyone will accept this. I know WDE's already making threats. Says you stole from him. Says those women belong to him by right of trade. He's gathering men who think the same. Gideon felt the old anger rise. Let him come. That's not smart. You're still weak. They're vulnerable. You need more than defiance. You need legitimacy. Sterling paused. You need to decide if this was just fever talking, or if you're willing to stand by what you said. Ayanna spoke then. Her voice carried weight. Asked us to leave that first night. Even dying. He tried to protect us by sending us away. We stayed by choice. And now Sterling looked at her directly. Now that he's called you his wife in front of witnesses, what do you choose? She didn't hesitate. I choose to make his words true because the word protects us and because he earned the right to say it. Kimya stepped outside, stood beside her sister. We both choose this. Sterling looked at all 3 of them. Something shifted in his expression. Not keyed approval, but acknowledgement. Then we do this properly. I'll spread word that Gideon Pratt has taken 2 wives, that it's recognized and accepted by the ranch. Anyone has a problem, they take it up with me first. Why would you do that? Gideon asked. Because what Wade did was wrong. Because these women deserve better than being traded like livestock. And because, Sterling paused, because maybe it's time this territory started recognizing that family takes different forms. He pulled money from his pocket. The same bills he'd given Wade before. Consider this a wedding gift. Enough to improve this cabin, buy supplies, make a real home. Gideon tried to protest. Sterling cut him off. Take it and use it to build something that proves Wade wrong. Prove that what he meant as a joke became something real. Sterling moved toward his horse. Wade will be back. Might take days, might take weeks, but he will come. Be ready. He rode off before Gideon could respond. The 3 of them stood in silence, processing everything that had changed in the span of a fevered declaration and 2 choices made in response. Finally, Ayanna spoke. You called us your wives while dying. Without thought, without plan, just instinct. I did. That means more than any conscious decision. She moved closer. Because instinct reveals truth. Kimla joined them. In our culture, when someone speaks in fever, we listen. The spirit speaks without the mind's interference. You spoke your truth. We are choosing to honor it. Gideon looked at both of them. These two women who'd been thrown at him as a cruel joke, who'd stayed when they could have fled, who'd cared for him through fever, who now stood with him despite the danger it brought. I don't know how to be a husband, he said quietly. Let alone to two people, I failed. Sarah failed to protect her, failed to be there when you are here now. Ayana's voice was firm. You protected us when you could barely stand, called us yours when it put you at risk. That is what matters. The word Kimla added wives. It protects us from men like Wade. But between us, we define what it means, not them. Something in Gideon's chest loosened. A knot he'd carried since Sarah died. This wouldn't erase his past. Wouldn't undo his failures. But maybe it was permission to try again. To build something new from impossible circumstances. Then we build this together, he said. Figure out what family means on our terms. Ayana nodded. Together. Kima smiled slightly. Our terms. That afternoon, word spread through the ranch faster than fire. Gideon Pratt and his two wives. Some men muttered disapproval. Others shrugged acceptance. Most simply filed it away as another strange thing in a strange territory. But inside that small cabin, three people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances began planning how to make fevered words into lasting truth. 3 days passed since Gideon's fever declaration. His strength returned gradually. The women stayed, not because they had to, but because they'd chosen to make his delirious words into something real. They established a rhythm without needing to discuss it. Kimya gathered plants and prepared food. Ayana reinforced the cabin's weak points and kept watch. Gideon worked when he could, short hours, building back his endurance. Communication grew easier. Ayana's English improved daily. Kimala taught him words in their language. He failed more than he succeeded, but the trying mattered. On the 4th morning, they used Sterling's money to buy lumber, expanded the cabin, added a second room, created more space for 3 people learning to live as family. Other ranch workers noticed. Some helped quietly, bringing extra supplies, offering advice on construction. Others kept their distance, disapproving but unwilling to confront Sterling's endorsement. UDE's name came up in rumors. He'd been seen to settlements over, drinking, talking, gathering men who shared his anger. The threat lingered like smoke on the horizon. One evening, as they worked on the new room's frame, Ayana paused, set down her tools. When you called us your wives, she said while fevered, did you know what you were saying? Gideon stopped working. Thought about it. Not fully, but some part of me knew. The part that wasn't confused by fever. That part was certain. And now that you're clear-headed, now I'm even more certain. He met her eyes. Because I've seen who you both are when given a choice. You chose to stay, chose to build this. That means everything. Kimla joined them. In my mother's village, sometimes marriages happened fast, during raids, during famines, when survival demanded it. Those marriages, the ones born from crisis, often became the strongest because they were tested before they began. This is different, though, Gideon said. I'm one man. You're 2 people. That's not normal. Ayana almost smiled. Nothing about this is normal. 2 Apache women thrown at a cowboy as a joke, who stayed to nurse him through fever, who he claimed asswives while dying, who chose to make those words real. She shook her head. Normal doesn't matter. What matters is whether we survive it, and whether we want to, Kimla added quietly. Gideon looked at the cabin they were expanding. At the garden Kimla had started, at the improvements Ayana had made to the fence line. Evidence of 3 people building something together. I want to, he said, want to survive it, want to build it, want to prove Wade wrong about what this is. Then we keep building. Ayana picked up her tools again. We keep choosing this every day until it's not strange anymore, just what we are. That night they sat outside watching stars. A routine that had developed without planning. Quiet time before sleep where words came easier in darkness. My mother, Kimmy said softly. She told me once, family is what you defend, not what you're born into. You defend what matters. What matters becomes family. What did she defend? Gideon asked. Us, her daughters. Even when it cost her everything. Kimla's voice carried old grief. She died defending us from sickness, stayed with us when she could have fled, saved us by sacrificing herself. Ayana's hand found her sister's, squeezed once. Your wife, Ayana said to Gideon. Sarah, you said you failed her? I did. I was late working when I should have been home by the time I got there. He stopped, swallowed. Everything was gone. That's not failure. That's tragedy. There's a difference. Feels the same. It's not. Ayana's voice was firm. Failure is choosing wrong. Tragedy is wrong choosing you. You didn't fail her. You lost her. That's different. Something in Gideon's chest cracked. A wall he'd built. 2 years I've been telling myself if I'd just been faster, just been there. And 2 years you've been wrong. Kimla leaned forward. You're here now for us. That's what matters, not what you couldn't do then. What you're doing now. The words settled into him. Not erasing the guilt, but shifting it, making room beside it for something new. I called you my wives while fevered, he said. But I'm calling you that now, conscious and clear, because you're right. Family is what you defend, and I'll defend this. You, us, whatever we're building. Above them, stars wheeled slowly. The night stretched vast and infinite. But inside that small circle of 3 people, something finite and precious took shape. The next morning, riders appeared on the horizon. Not Wade yet, but strangers. Men from neighboring territory. They approached the cabin, stopped at a respectful distance. The leader called out, looking for Gideon Pratt. Gideon stepped forward. Ayana and Kimla flanked him. Ready? That's me. Heard you took Apache wives. That true? It is. The man studied them, then nodded. Good. Need to know there are men who don't follow WDE's thinking. Men who see different. Wanted to say, if trouble comes, you got allies. Sterling was right. Word had spread. Some opposed, but some understood. Some saw past the joke to what it had become. It's starting, Ayana said. People choosing sides. Let them choose. Gideon turned back to the cabin to the work waiting. We know what where. That's enough. Inside they continued building, adding walls, creating structure, making permanent what had started as temporary, making real what had begun as fever. And with each board nailed, each improvement made, the cabin stopped being Gideon's alone, stopped being a place of isolation, became instead what they'd named it, home. 2 weeks after Gideon's fevered declaration, Wade returned. Not of the ranch, but close enough. He'd established himself at a settlement 8 Mi north, drinking, gathering men, building his case that Gideon Pratt had stolen what belonged to him. Word reached the ranch through travelers. Wade was making formal challenges now, claiming legal right to the women, saying Gideon's fever had been convenient excuse for theft. Sterling brought the news personally, stood in the doorway of the now expanded cabin, surveyed the improvements. The second room, the reinforced walls, the garden growing strong. He's demanding you face him, Sterling said publicly. Settlement Square. Tomorrow at noon, Gideon set down the tool he'd been using. What happens if I don't go? He brings men here, makes it worse. Sterling's expression was grim. Better to end this in front of witnesses. Make your claim official where everyone can see. Ayana stepped forward. We go with you. No, too dangerous. We are the ones being claimed. We are the ones who chose. Wego. Her tone left no room for argument. Kima nodded. What he said in fever. We made real by choice. Now we stand by that choice together. The next morning they rode out. 3 people on 2 horses. Gideon with Ayana behind him. Kimala on Sterling's borrowed mount. The foreman rode with them, silent, protective. The settlement square was already crowded when they arrived. Men from multiple ranches, curious onlookers. Those who wanted to see how this strange situation resolved. Wade stood in the center. 3 men flanked him, all armed, all ready for confrontation. When Gideon dismounted, Wade's expression showed satisfaction. Finally decided to show up. Thought you might hide behind your fever forever. Gideon helped Ayana down. Kimala dismounted beside them. They walked forward together, 3 abreast, presenting united front. I'm not hiding behind anything. Gideon said, I'm here to end this. Good, because you're going to return what you stole. Those women, they were purchased, traded for. You had no right. No one has the right to purchase human beings. Gideon's voice carried across the square. What you did was wrong. What happened after was justice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. WDE's face flushed. Justice? You were out of your mind with fever. Didn't know what you were saying. You called them your wives because you were delirious. I called them my wives because I was finally clear enough to say the truth. Gideon stepped forward. Fever didn't create the words. It just removed the fear of saying them. Ayana moved beside him, spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. He asked us to leave that first night, begged us to run. While dying, he tried to protect us. We chose to stay. We chose to care for him. We chose to accept his words when he spoke them. Kima added, and we choose now to stand with him as his wives by our decision. Not his, not yours, ours. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. This wasn't what they'd expected. Not forced women, but women declaring their own choice. UDE's composure cracked. That's not how this works. You can't just decide. We can, we did, we are. Ayana's voice cut through his. You treated us as objects. It treated us as people. You wanted to humiliate him. You gave us the chance to save him. Now we stand here free choosing, and there is nothing you can do about it. One of WDE's men stepped back, then another. The reality sinking in. This wasn't about property or purchase. This was about three people who'd chosen each other despite impossible circumstances. Sterling moved forward, his presence adding weight. I've witnessed their arrangement. It's recognized by our ranch, by the territory authorities I've contacted. Gideon Pratt's claim is legitimate. His wives stand here by choice. Anyone disputes that they dispute the law. WDE's hand went to his belt, hovering near his weapon. This is wrong. All of this, one man, two wives. It's unusual, Sterling interrupted, but it's legal, and it's their choice. You're beaten, Wade, accept it. For a long moment, violence hung between them. The crowd held its breath. Then an older man stepped forward from the onlookers. Weathered, respected. I knew Gideon's wife, Sarah. Good woman, died tragic. He looked at Gideon. She'd want you to live, not punish yourself forever. If these women give you that chance, take it. Honor her by being happy again. Other voices rose. Not all supportive, but enough. Enough to shift the balance. Wade looked around, saw his support crumbling, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. Fine, keep them, but don't expect this territory to accept you. Don't expect respect. Don't need acceptance from men like you, Gideon said. Just need you to stay away from my family. The word landed. Family, deliberate, final. Wade left. His remaining men followed, their boots heavy on packed dirt. The crowd dispersed slowly. Some shooting disapproving looks, others nodding acknowledgement. Sterling approached. It's done officially. You three are recognized. Wade won't return. Gideon turned to Ayana and Kimmy Mella. These two women who'd been thrown at him as a joke, who'd stayed through fever, who'd chosen to make his delirious words into binding truth, who now stood publicly as his wives. Thank you, he said quietly, for choosing this, for choosing us. Ayana's expression softened. You gave us choice when no one else did. You protected us when you could barely stand. You called us yours while dying. That earned our choice. And now, Kimala added, we go home together as family. They rode back as the sun climbed high. Three people who'd started as strangers forced together, who'd become something neither ownership nor obligation could name. Something chosen, something real. At the cabin, they dismounted, looked at the structure they'd expanded, the garden they'd planted, the life they were building board by board, day by day. Gideon stood between them. Felt the weight of promises made in fever and kept in consciousness. Felt the burden of proving Wade wrong. Felt the responsibility of protecting what they were creating. But more than that, he felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Sarah was gone. That grief would never fully leave. But these two women, they'd given him permission to live again, to build again, to belong again. Inside the cabin, they prepared dinner together. Moved around each other with growing familiarity. Spoke in mixed languages that made communication possible. Planned improvements for winter. Discussed planting for spring. Small moments, ordinary moments. The kind that built life rather than survived it. That night, sitting outside under stars again, Ayana spoke. When you woke that morning, when Wade came, you called us your wives while barely conscious. Do you remember what you felt? Gideon thought back through the fever, through the confusion, to that moment of clarity. I felt like I'd finally said something true, something that mattered. Even if it killed me to stand there saying it, it almost did, Kimla said. Worth it, though. He looked at them both because it brought us here to this. To family, Ayana said. To choice, Kimla added to home. Gideon finished. Above them, stars wheeled on, indifferent to human struggles, unconcerned with who loved who or how families formed. The universe didn't care that three people who shouldn't fit together had created something that worked. But they cared, and that was enough. Gideon Pratt, the broken cowboy, had woken one fevered morning and called two strangers his wives. Had meant it without knowing he meant it. Had offended it without strength to defend, had built it into truth through choice after choice after choice. They'd sent two Apache sisters to him as a joke, expected humiliation, expected failure, expected nothing but cruelty's entertainment. Instead, they'd given him family, given him purpose, given him the chance to prove that sometimes the cruelest jokes become the truest blessings. And in the end, that was exactly what had happened. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale from the frontier, where unexpected choices forge the strongest bonds. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.